Hello, and good afternoon, and welcome to the session on manufacturing and dynamics. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Melissa Cook. I am the Global Manufacturing Lead for Dynamics, and for those of you who know me, I like to keep things extremely simple. So today what I will focus on is basically the who, what, where, when, and why of manufacturing and dynamics. And actually we're going to spend a little bit more time than you might think on the who side, because it's really important, we think, for you to be able to navigate that labyrinth at Microsoft and know who the manufacturing folks are. So I'll start again by just focusing a little bit on the team that I have here to speak with me. So again, I'm Melissa, and I'm the global lead for manufacturing. So I sit in Redmond, and actually I am part of the new industries team for Dynamics, which has literally been formed here in the last couple of months. I report to a guy who I think is here, present, if you raise his hand, Seth Patton, sitting right there, who has all of the industry leads, again, myself being manufacturing, and then Seth reports into Wayne Morris's overall marketing team. So there's some hints on who we are. And I will be covering the overall all-up global approach to the manufacturing industry. And with me here today, I have two of the three key regional leads for manufacturing around the world. I have Gil Garcia here, who is covering the US, and he will spend a little bit of time talking about our key manufacturing verticals, and then also talk about the program in the US. I also have Chandru Shankar here, who is covering the EMEA program for manufacturing, and he'll also do a little bit of an overview of the overall manufacturing dynamics sales motion. And actually, just a little bit before I start into the presentation, let's just talk a little bit about what we've been hearing the last couple of days about Microsoft's shift from being a product company to devices and services. And I just want to make sure we don't underestimate that that's a big shift. It's not just marketing fluff. It has a lot of meat behind it. And in making that shift from being a product company to being a devices and, more importantly, a services company, we also have to shift as a company to being industry focused. It's fundamental to the strategy of understanding how to both serve our customers and create services in order to serve our customers. So what you will see is more and more investment for Microsoft on the idea of how we approach different industry markets. So I think it's important to understand that shift. And for manufacturing particularly, that industry, for me, my number one priority in approaching the manufacturing industry is the partner strategy. And the reason for that, as you all know, if you're knowledgeable about manufacturing, is the breadth of the verticals in manufacturing. I like to say it's everything from chicken processing to making space shuttles. Incredibly broad industry, and in that industry we have to have lots of partners that can bring to bear vertical expertise. So you guys are key to the strategy, and I'm really happy to be here. So I'm going to start with basics. I talked about being simple, just what is manufacturing. So why do I even bother talking about this? Is that there is sometimes confusion when talking about the manufacturing industry. And what we mean by manufacturing industry is the set of companies that are actually engaged in transforming materials and substance into new products. It's a set of companies. That's what the industry or the sector is. We get confused sometimes, and you hear the confusion in the industry, and also you'll hear it sometimes even from ourselves, Microsoft, in talking about a set of product features that happen to be about the processes that support production. So there's a difference. Clearly, we'll talk about our CRM and AX platforms and how they provide a broad variety of features and functions to sell into manufacturing companies, only some of which support the function of production, and others support the other processes that manufacturing companies care about, like selling and servicing their products. So there is confusion. I just wanted to start off by saying the industry itself is just the set of companies that are classified as manufacturers. And certainly myself and my team, we care about all the features and functions that are necessary to support those companies. So I'll talk a little bit about manufacturing industry trends. This is from a Microsoft perspective. We certainly see in this industry a shift, a power shift to the consumer side of the house. And what that means, of course, is a much more of an emphasis and a need for manufacturing companies to understand the front end of the process. So that's why you see more and more demand for CRM solutions, for solutions that deal with moving inventory management closer to the consumer, such as VMI. You see more interest in mass customization. Again, things that get manufacturing closer to the front end or the demand side of manufacturing. So we've seen that shift. We'll continue to see that shift. And in that shift, those same consumers that we're trying to get close to are more connected. And they have higher expectations of your ability to respond to the demand because they are online, and if they don't like what they get from our manufacturing customers, they can go elsewhere. In fact, they're shopping right now as we speak online for products. I'll talk a little bit more on the next slides on globalization and the emerging economies and changing demographics and what's actually happening in the industry and why you should care if you're supporting manufacturers. So let me just delay that for a second. And then just circle back to other trends, of course, that are important for manufacturing is sustainability. It's so important in manufacturing, not only because of increasing regulations, although we certainly see that in sustainability in other areas of manufacturing, but because, in fact, the world is getting tighter and tighter sets of resources, and we will see manufacturers need to adapt to restricted access to resource. You'll see more interest in reusing products, recycling materials, and that's just going to continue to grow over the coming years. So those are the trends, but I wanted to make a next tick down on what's going on with globalization and emerging economies. I love these two slides because it just really dramatizes what's going on in the economy. It's a situation that's the first time certainly all of us in this room have seen occur in our lifetime. And actually, historically, I believe it's the first time given the history of manufacturing. But on the left is a curve we all kind of know and hate as opposed to knowing and loving, which is what happened to the economy starting in 2007, where it nosedived. And of course, it's recovered quite a bit, but the future is a little uncertain. We all know that because we're international people. What people are familiar with is the middle curve, which is sort of the average sum of the game. What people are less familiar with is that what's been going on the top and the bottom of those curves is that the growth rates for emerging economies are significantly higher than our mature economies. And what that's resulted in is the slide on the right-hand side, which I just like to call the crossed sword slide, which is, again, the first time in our lifetime where the share of global production in emerging economies is higher than the share of global production in mature economies. So what these two slides represent is the problem facing our manufacturing customers, which is the ability to adapt to change. Change is the problem that manufacturing companies must address. The ability to react to economic difficulty on the left, and the ability to react to changing demographics, where the actual demand and production capabilities are both shifting at the same time to emerging economies. It's important for you to understand that as partners because you will see that in the business pipeline changing to be companies that are interested in being more flexible and adapting to these two scenarios. So let me just show you a couple of recent quotes I pulled down to just support what's going on. This is an article in Industry Week that just emphasizes what we're hearing, which is as manufacturing companies need to be adaptable. We love the fact that they're using the word dynamic. They need to be dynamic businesses. You heard that in the keynote from Steve Ballmer. We think it's a critical thing to be able to address with our product line. And so you see it again in APEX very recently, just this last month. Companies have got to be able to be more agile and adapt. The reason, again, is supported by what's going on with both the economy and the changing demographics. Another couple of sets of quotes to just keep in mind is that, in fact, in order to be adaptable, people will continue to play a really important role. So people in manufacturing, I think we can get hung up in manufacturing about the importance of automation. Clearly that's important. But we can't lose sight of the fact that manufacturing is a people business and that providing tools for our people to be more efficient and more adaptable is going to be a critical part of this vision. People will, in fact, be the center of the factory of the future. Now, what's hard about that is, in fact, people's expectations themselves are changing. So again, if people are, in fact, the future of the manufacturing, the center of manufacturing, they're, in fact, have higher expectations of how they get information, when they get information, and where they get information. So people, again, and the ability to adapt and support people is critical. So manufacturing, our vision from Microsoft for manufacturing falls into three key messages. The first is we want to help our manufacturing customers to innovate. We want to be an innovative company in Microsoft and bring innovative software to bear, but the return is to our manufacturing customers is to be able to help them, in fact, innovate. Again, with the economic downturn, you can't, as a manufacturing company, you can't just cost cut your way out of an economic downturn. You, in fact, have to innovate your way out of an economic downturn as a manufacturer. And that's because in that industry, we have a much higher percentage of fixed costs. You can't easily shut a plant down, start up a new plant. You've got to keep the plant at capacity. So the need for manufacturers to innovate is much higher than any other industry. The second is we believe that manufacturing companies must be agile and responsive. I've talked about why that's important already. And then lastly, we believe that the future vision of a manufacturer is that people are the center, and you need people to be engaged in the business of manufacturing. So for all of this, you need tools, products, devices, and services to bring to bear for the vision of a dynamic manufacturer. So I'll talk a little bit about ERP and actually the relationship to CRM. So manufacturing companies people don't think of manufacturing as an innovative business, but in fact, 90% of the patents in the US, for example, come out of the manufacturing industry. Manufacturing is, in fact, about innovation. What's interesting is systems development and innovation in enterprise systems came out of the manufacturing industry. Started back in the 60s with inventory control packages, some of the first enterprise solutions on the market. Moving into the 70s with the MRP, MRP2. Eventually, they struck the M, put an E in there, called it ERP. And all along, the only thing that was occurring was increased amount of functionality that was being encapsulated under the term. So the move from MRP to MRP2 added some of the financial aspects of inventory control. When we moved to ERP, finance and HR was added in terms of the scope of the term. And what we believe the future holds for manufacturing is wrapping in the front-end processes, which I think today might be known sometimes as CRM, and having that be a full suite of software for manufacturers that brings the end-to-end integration that manufacturers are seeking in order to become more agile and responsive to demand. So we don't know what that term is. Personally, I have an issue with the term ERP, and hopefully it will change over time. But again, you're just going to see that idea be expansive, include the front end, which again we see CRM fitting into today, and the back end, which typically people think of ERP. So more innovation. I guess the good news for us from Microsoft perspective is that legacy ERP applications have a bad reputation. If we ask our customers why they're coming and seeking products from Microsoft, it's because they think their legacy solutions are expensive, they're slow, they're inflexible, and they're hard to use. So Microsoft's approach to that is to go right after that particular set of problems with our value prop. So we believe our value prop for our CRM and ERP solutions for manufacturers is that we can address those problems with a low TCO, agile, faster time to value, and easier to use set of products. So again, we believe that the reputation is actually well-deserved in the industry and that we have a different offer to bring to bear in manufacturing. One other point I'd like to make our value prop is that Microsoft knows productivity. We were birthed as a productivity company. Personal computing, that word personal, was how we were formed as a company. And we want to bring that DNA to the manufacturer worker and bring and leverage the entire stack of Microsoft products through the Dynamics fabric into the factory worker space. We don't think that's been done yet, and we just think we are really uniquely positioned with our DNA to address that market. We have an end-to-end solution for those of you who are familiar with our product line. Some people may be new to CRM and AX, but in general, we can address everything from the demand side with our CRM solutions, which address selling and marketing, and we have distribution and manufacturing solutions all the way out to the supply side. So that's our vision. We have many pieces of that puzzle today. You'll continually see Microsoft bring our R&D investments to bear to be able to cover this end-to-end picture for manufacturers. We'll go into this a little bit more detail. So what do analysts say? They have great things to say about Microsoft Dynamics, that we're clearly in the enterprise turf, and that if you're, as a customer, a larger multinational organization, you should definitely be considering Microsoft. You guys are probably familiar with these. These are actually out on Partner Source. Also, of course, we've made the Gartner's Magic Quadrant for ERP. We're up in the right-hand side, which is a great place to be. And I think we continue to get great results from analysts, and you'll see more of that to come in the next year. Our customers also have great things to say for us in the manufacturing area. Dell, of course, is a classic example where they can give you the low TCO story, $50 million worth of saving bucks. We also have lots of customers can give you the agile story or the ability to address emerging markets. AB Agri is a classic example where they bought Microsoft to be able to get into the BRIC countries and have been very successful there. I will make a point on references. If I had my choice, the one place I'd spend a whole bunch of money would be to get gazillions of references documented. I will ask you as partners to help us with that. You have references. If you have references that you think should be global references, please reach out to me or any member of my team, and let's get that rolling. You will see an investment in more references this year. We just got our first major China reference. You saw that alluded to in a keynote yesterday with Diamond Tungsten, largest tungsten manufacturer in the world. We sent a camera crew to China. It was an expensive reference, but we've got it, and it's great. All right, so with that, I am going to locate Gil. He's right down here. You're on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gil Garcia. I'm the manufacturing guy for the U.S. Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but we actually have a complete industry team that reports to Bob Aronson. And what the role of an IMDM is to identify the white space in the AX and CRM products. We try to fill in the white space with ISVs certified for Microsoft Dynamics solutions, or I guess our own code that we add to the application. But each of the IMDMs covers an industry, and within each industry we cover a variety of verticals. The IMDM is a good resource for a partner to understand what verticals we have requirements in, what the ecosystem should look like. We can also help partners with helping them build their sales and pre-sales teams, and focus on different geographies and markets. So I suggest if you don't know your current IMDM, you tend to align with them. It's a good idea. We also have a series of technical architects. Any of you who have worked in manufacturing probably know Alex. Alex is, I guess, one of our geniuses inside Microsoft, but he is tasked with helping partners help build out solution stacks by vertical. He knows every component of the product. He knows how to get data in and out of the product. He can help you build demonstrable solution stacks, and he's just a tremendous resource available to you as if you're a manufacturing partner. Oops, which is the advance? I've broken it. Which is the advance, this one? Got it, that's probably why. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about the industries and the verticals within industry, but it's important to understand that if you engage with Microsoft, we're very, very, very focused in these industries and these verticals. Doesn't mean to say a partner can't go out and sell outside of these, but if you want to engage Microsoft resources, these are the verticals that we play in. In my space, I cover both discrete and process manufacturing, so I've got industrial equipment, automotive, A&D, high techs in there, chemicals, life sciences, and primary metals. And obviously, life sciences is a mixed bag of pharmaceutical process, biotech process, nutraceuticals process, med device, discrete. But they all have similar compliance issues. But getting deeper into the manufacturing verticals, if you look at my discrete manufacturing sectors, inside industrial equipment, typically the business process that we solve for these are things like advanced bid quote, heavy project management requirements, complex configurators, very strong engineering change management, both on the inbound and outbound side, field service, and in some cases plant maintenance. If you're a heavy equipment manufacturer, you kind of fall into this sector we call IEM. Automotive and A&D are kind of add-ons. We don't sell directly to the OEMs, but we in automotive, we sell to the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 part suppliers for automotive. And for aerospace and defense, obviously a highly complex IEM-driven type business, but with very stringent DoD compliance, Department of Defense compliance requirements. Just FYI, Microsoft, in conjunction with some of our ISVs, are working on a DoD compliant solution where we'll probably be announcing something for you in the convergence timeframe of next year. So look for us to make significant headway into DoD. And obviously, high tech is an area we're very strong in. High tech is big on the West Coast and some parts of the Northeast, but they have some particular issues, things like revenue recognition when they embed software in the devices. Again, we're fairly strong in that. We've got some good IP with some ISVs. On the process manufacturing side, batch chemicals. If you know the chemical industry, you know you're going to run into batch, high volume, repetitive, schedule, release based, and continuous flow. We're really try to focus on batch chemicals, which is about 60% of the market, but we're very, very strong there. In terms of primary metals, we would like, obviously, to have more partners. We have several that do a very good job in primary metals. Primary metals has a wet side and a dry side. The wet side is the foundry, where we're very strong with process manufacturing. The dry side is more like the metal service center, where you have metal fabrication and trim optimization and roll tracking and a whole bunch of things that we don't do out of the box, but we have some good ISVs to help us in that space. And life sciences, obviously, a little bit more complex when it comes to regulatory compliance and some of the requirements of the AX product. In pharmaceuticals, for instance, you have to turn off a lot of the flexibility inherent in AX in order to have a master formula and comply with their requirements. With med device, you have to be ISO 13485 compliant, which has a whole set of rules. So good news is we have FDA validation processes that address the compliance issue. We have very strong products, and we have several good ISVs that help you address that space as well. So I was asked to talk a little bit about some of the trends that are happening. Everybody's pretty down in manufacturing for the U.S. market, and the more and more I read the industry pundits, the more and more I got enthused about what's happening in U.S. manufacturing. You know, there's been a resurgence and a turnaround. The traditional barriers to manufacturing in the U.S. have been things like energy prices and obviously things like availability of labor. But you'll see in that first box, the decrease in demand, that's going away. With the introduction of shale oil as a replacement for petroleum fuel base, a lot of these manufacturing companies are actually making huge reductions in cost in their manufacturing process, and that's what's really pushing the resurgence in manufacturing in the U.S. I don't have time to hit all the bullet points because I've only got 15 minutes up here, but just some key messages here. Most industrial equipment manufacturers are looking for digital innovation. So they're looking for systems that are going to get them more productive without having to add capacity. If you look at what happened to the steel industry and the paper industry, in the old days, the simple solution to address growth was add capacity. But guess what? Capacity is forever. And when demand goes away, you're stuck with this fixed assets. So our message now to manufacturing companies is you have to do more with the capacity you currently have before you add capacity. And that's what digital, in my view, digital innovation is. You need to be able to get more efficient, more effective with things like MRP, CRM, supply chain tools. So digital is a big message. Obviously, collaboration falls right into the hands of Dynamics AX, collaboration with trading partners, both on the supply side and the customer side. I think mirroring Melissa's message earlier, we as an AX community have to really hit hard this thing called agility, because that's where legacy systems fall down. Once you configure a legacy application, that's it, you're done. You have to reinstall if you want to change your business processes. So more and more, when I talk to my manufacturing partners, I'm saying we have to figure out how to communicate the agility message in Dynamics AX, and that could be in a demo showing how easy it is to write a new report, or to reconfigure the system, or to add a new field, or when we talk about the layered architecture that shows where ISV products sit or where customization sits. So we really have to hit hard on the agility message. And obviously, you always have to throw the complex regulations in there. Automotive was no big surprise, but just some tidbits, some really interesting tidbits. The high peak of the automotive market in the U.S. was around 2004, where the U.S. automakers sold between 14 and 15 million automobiles. We're there now, so we're approaching the peak of the industry. Another interesting tidbit I read this morning, China last year sold 19 million automobiles, 5 million more than they did in the entire U.S. market. Ford Motor Company has only 3% of the market share in China. What does that mean? It says like Ford Motor Company has the potential to sell everything they sold in the U.S. plus more. So that market's going to explode in the next few years. When you talk about what's happening in the U.S., most U.S. automakers are running at 95 to 98% capacity, running 3 full shifts, producing automobiles. And when that happens, obviously the parts suppliers have to meet the demands. Everybody's hiring. You can see the statistics on efficiency. In 2004, there were 70 auto assembly plants in the U.S. Now there's only 55, but those 55 are producing the same capacity that 70 plants were several years ago in the heyday of manufacturing, which means automated systems are getting them more efficient, and you've got to sell that message. Do more with the capacity you have. Optimize production, throughput, and efficiency with the ERP tools as opposed to spending money on buying a new machine. In aerospace and defense, I'll just throw out some numbers. The U.S. is facing about a $450 billion cut in spending. Ooh, that's big money. We got to get out of this business. But guess what? That market represents close to $500 billion in spending over the next year, even after that huge cut. So if you look at the chemical market, I think it's about $600 or $700 billion. If you look at some of the other manufacturing sectors, this is probably the 3rd or 4th largest manufacturing sector in the U.S., even after $400 million in cuts. So this market's not going away. It's there to stay. It's good. The other thing that's important is in this space, it's absolutely essential to sell agility. When you can't sell to the aerospace and defense industry, you have to find another market, whether it's the automotive space if you're building parts, or whether it's the commercial IEM space. But these guys, when they buy software, they have to think ahead. Like, what if the A&D market dries up for me? What if the U.S. cuts its spending on A&D? I have to be agile enough to change my business processes. And you'll see that when we talk about the airlines. Boeing predicted 24,000 of the 35,000 new airplanes They're smaller, lighter, more fuel-efficient planes. Only 760 are the big Airbus, Boeing 777 type planes. If you did not have agile systems to allow you to change the way you make airplanes and the way you design airplanes and now make smaller planes but more of them, you'd be stuck. You'd be re-engineering, be looking out in the market looking for new systems. So again, you'll see the theme across all the manufacturing sectors that I talk about. You've got to be responsive to change, you've got to be agile, and you have to have software systems that allow the manufacturing company to change as things change in this dynamic environment that we're in. And always with complex regulations. So when we talk about high tech, I thought this was pretty cool. General manufacturing as an industry is supposed to go up by 2.2%, maybe 3.6% in 2014. Look at high tech computer and electronics, growing at 4.3% in 2013 and up to 9% in 2014. So high tech, if you're a partner out there, high tech is a good place to be. It's a growing market, right? MAPI is the Manufacturers Alliance for Productivity and Innovation. They're predicting pretty significant growth in the high tech or traditional manufacturing electronics sector, make to stock as well. I think this is pretty cool, this next slide. High tech. But they publish, reports that talk about what are going to be the game changers in the next 5 or 10 years. And, on the left-hand side, you'll see an example of some of the game changers. In my view of the world, and in talking to customers and talking to prospects, the three biggest areas I think they're going to impact the U.S. manufacturing sector: advanced robotics. So you're going to see, I'm seeing now fully automated retail checkout systems where the consumer puts their groceries on a conveyor belt and the person behind just bags the product. There's no key punching. Everything's scanned in automatically. Next generation genomics. I've talked to several biotech companies that are producing medicines specific to the individual. They take your DNA sample. I've talked to the companies that produce the DNA sequencers. They take your DNA sample and they actually configure a medicine to treat your specific illness. And I'm not talking about some exotic illness. I'm talking about common everyday illnesses like leprosy. That's all. No, I'm just kidding about that. I've actually talked to biotech companies that are engineering medicines that are unique to the individual based on their DNA. And that's the way of the future in medicine, by the way. And then obviously these energy-saving devices, battery technology, everything, everything from solar-powered generation equipment, but really energy storage devices that are fed by these things. That's the big push in the next 5 years in this sector. If you look at chemicals, obviously impacted by petrochemicals, the price of petrochemicals, especially if you're sourcing globally. You'll see the U.S. market. There's probably 170 major chemical companies today. In our ecosystem, in Microsoft Manufacturing, we need more VARs that understand process and chemical manufacturing. So, we're actually looking to enhance that area for our sales initiatives. It's a huge industry. Remember, aerospace, $500 billion, chemicals, $760 billion. So there's tons of space out there. You'll see the growth factors. They're continuing to export. Raw materials pricing with the introduction of this shale gas and shale oil has actually reduced production costs in many chemical companies. So you're actually seeing chemical products prices drop for the first time in the U.S., right? And you can see the hiring and the size of the market. The reason I put so many statistics in here was because you'll be able to download this presentation and take it back with you. So if you take it away and you're doing an internal presentation to try to understand what markets you want to focus in, this will be helpful. These are all current statistics. But you can see the ACC envisions capital spending to reach $64.5 billion in 2017. When I talk about the life sciences space, there's also some really cool, compelling statistics. in life sciences, the research that I did indicates that a mid-market life science company, about 100 concurrent seats, spends about 38% of their IT budget on enterprise applications. So when I did the math and the number of U.S. life science companies there are, I think there's 1,234 in the U.S., they're basically spending $1.6 billion just in licensed software next year. So a tremendous opportunity for us. You can see, the market's substantial. The Affordable Care Act now is just pumping all kinds of money into the pharmaceutical sector because now everybody has to be insured. So that's driving big growth in the industry. And if you look at some of the trends in industry, these guys are constantly competing for the new drugs, so innovation is very important to them. It's important for us to understand how they do innovation in the life cycle of a new drug introduction in the pharmaceutical space. But the other big thing that's happening in life sciences in the U.S. is mergers and acquisitions. I can't tell you how many companies I've talked to, tier one pharmaceutical companies that have said, Gil, it cost me $5 million to implement a new SAP site in one of my manufacturing plants. I need something that's faster to implement, lower total cost of ownership. Can Dynamics AX play in our space in a two-tier type of environment? So that's also a big driver in the industry. And so finally, it's kind of our recruiting message for today. You saw that there's opportunity in most of the sectors. I think we have great partners today in discrete manufacturing and industrial equipment. We've got a very strong presence, but we still are trying to add more, capacity in chemicals, in primary metals, especially if you know the dry side of primary metals. If you know how to work with service centers, we need ISV solutions for that in addition to what we have. Always looking for people in life sciences because that's a big space and there's plenty of room to play. Looking for partners that have good automotive knowledge. And aerospace and defense is going to be a big push for us in 2014. So if you have people who know A&D and you like manufacturing, this is a good place for us to play jointly with Microsoft. If you have any questions, you want to find out more about what we're doing in manufacturing in the U.S., there's my contact information, and feel free to reach out. I'll turn it over to Chandru.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is this on? Oh, yeah, it's on. All right. So, as Melissa said, we're going to keep it simple. She talked about the who. Gil talked about the why in a lot of great detail. So I'm not going to cover the industries again, although a lot of the industries overlap. So first off, Chandru Shankar, I'm responsible for manufacturing in EMEA. In EMEA, we have a new Vice President, Julian Johnston, who's our new VP for EMEA. And we have four focus areas. Financial services, my counterpart David Brown leads that. Retail, Dilip Popat leads that. And then we also have a public sector right now. Sandana is taking care of that. And then from a manufacturing standpoint, I'm responsible for the solution sales there. As Melissa pointed out and Gil's talked about it, it's a humongous space. Manufacturing covers many industries within, not just verticals, industries. So we're not going to start here and say we're going to boil the ocean in one fell swoop. We just can't. So we're going to pick a few industries to go with. And so when Gil talked about discrete and process, there's very few pure process companies anymore. So what we're talking about is what are the predominant processes that we see, manufacturing processes that we see in these companies. But the companies, the target industries that we're going after in manufacturing right now, to start with, automotive, industrial equipment, and high tech from a discrete standpoint, and from a process standpoint, food and beverage, chemicals. And then we're also addressing resources right now, starting with utilities directly through partners. But there's also a wave of other industries, oil and gas, for example. Gil talked about aerospace and defense. There's pharmaceuticals, life sciences. The idea is we're going to be strategic in these areas but we'll be opportunistic in others, right? So you've heard Neil and Wayne and Kirill talk about the push with Microsoft getting more and more directly involved in sales cycles. And this is a direct result of our competition. You go to some countries, in EMEA, for example, in Germany, even in the small, in the breadth, in the mid-market space, we see competition from SAP with direct sales force. So SAP is going directly and working with the customers there. And customers tell us, well, if SAP is able to send me their sales force, you guys are not even around, why am I going to talk to you? So this is the direct results of our competition going to our customers. So you are going to see more and more of us supporting you folks. So all the other stuff that you've heard, that partners are going away, impossible. We cannot do this without you, right? Absolutely, you are still the core of our fabric. We are going to go together. But it's just going to be that there's going to be more and more direct involvement from us, especially in the upper segment. So how do we go about doing this? Part of what I was going to talk about is a little bit on our solution selling model. Everybody, I think, here is familiar with MSSP? Everybody? Microsoft Solution Selling Process, yeah? So we still go by MSSP. And of course, from a methodology standpoint, we have SureStep. SureStep starts in the diagnostic phase, which is mapped to MSSP. But essentially, we go from lead generation through prospect, qualify, solution proof, and close. What we are doing more and more often in EMEA is we do one-to-many workshops initially with the customer. So this could be manufacturing workshops in the countries. It could be in Vedbeck, where we have our manufacturing R&D team. We do a lot of events. How many of you have heard of Lotus Formula One? Everybody? Yes. So, of course, we have our logo on the car, right? So the Dynamics logo is plopped on the car. So every time Kimi runs a lap, you're seeing Dynamics out there. So it's a good thing. And it's great because a lot of companies are coming to us and looking at that. Not just Formula One companies, by the way, because there are Formula One companies coming directly and talking to us and very interested in our solution. But there are a lot of companies, manufacturing specifically, who come out and say, hey, what's your solution? I'd like to understand more. So we do a lot of these workshops in Enstone, which is the Lotus plant, and we do it in other locations as well. And these are essentially to drive awareness. So we decidedly stay at a higher level, but we want to bring a business sense to the conversation. So it's not about, hey, what are the, what's the database limitations and what are the performance sizing, et cetera. We talk about what are the workloads that we address for the customer. And I will talk about that in just a second. So it's decidedly at a higher level, the conversation, because typically we see the CXOs in the room there. They're the operation leads, the CEOs, CIOs who come to those kind of sessions. Then as we move into the sales cycle, we start getting into one-to-few workshops. Again, I call it one-to-few there because it's still early in the life cycle of the sales cycle, and they still haven't made they're looking at multiple different solution providers. And this is where we'll do a one-to-few, but start talking specifics into their vertical. So if they're in IEM, we'll start talking specifically about what are pain points in IEM, what are workloads in IEM that we can resolve. If you're in automotive, Gil talked about automotive is such a large industry. Within that, there are multiple verticals. You have tier 1, tier 2 manufacturers. You have what am I thinking? Well, parts suppliers, but also the OEMs. And so there's just a host load of dealer management. That's what I'm thinking. So you got a whole, that's a whole other vertical, dealer management. So you have different verticals within automotive. So we try to get more specific there. And then finally, in the solution proof area, we try to do, it has to be one-on-one there. We're actually doing a specific, focused proof of concept type demo out there. And the more deeper you go, obviously that can carry you through all the way through to the implementation. But in a nutshell, at the end of the day, we want to come together with a proposal that encompasses license, delivery, and support. That's essentially what we're after. So, as you can see, partner is still number one for us. I mean, for us, that's still our lifeblood. That's still how we go about our business. From a team standpoint, our pursuit team looks like this. So in EMEA, in my team, we're bringing about industry solution managers. So in my team, we will have focus managers focusing on automotive, on industrial equipment, on chemicals, etc. And then we also have GSI leads and GISV leads who cut across industry. So they will still work with multiple of our partners and then bring us the sales leads. So we work on the sales side. In each of the areas, that's the interesting thing about EMEA. EMEA, is not just, it's multiple countries, multiple languages, multiple localizations. So it is very interesting. So you got 3 major countries in UK, France, Germany, each of which, of course, have their own language and localizations. Then you have the multi-sub areas, CEE, when you go from Russia to Czechoslovakia to Slovenia, etc. Each of them have their own requirements. Then you get MEA, and MEA you got Middle East and WECA and the rest of Africa, South Africa, Israel. So there's a lot of those requirements there, and Western Europe. Western Europe, within the Nordics, you can have differences. So, welcome to my region. It's fun. Every day is a fun day. But the idea is, we have partners. That's why we have a wealth of partners. And one of the things we're trying to get very clear with our partners is which specific country or countries can you bring your muscle to help us with? And if you're an ISV, is your solution localized for that country? Do you have pre-sales resources to support? If you're an SI, you have a little bit more flexibility, but then you can cover the gamut. But do you have resources for that specific industry, knowledge of that industry? And we try to differentiate because an ISV does not have to be an SI. I think there's been a little bit of confusion in the past. ISVs are not SIs. They can help, and they do. They can provide architects. They can make sure that the solution is right. But they don't necessarily have to have a full team. Their job is to create the solution that meets the white space needs of the company, right? And then, so we marry them up with an SI or a GSI as the need be. So that's kind of our go-to-market strategy. We also we're very fortunate in EMEA that we have our Microsoft Dynamics R&D team for manufacturing in Vedbæk, which is a suburb of Copenhagen. And there we have 3 leads who are responsible specifically for these areas. So from a specialty chemical standpoint, Fredrik Heitela. From industrial equipment standpoint, Conrad Volkman. And from a food and beverage standpoint, it's Maj-Britt Winter. And it's fantastic because one of the things we do, and I know we've already done a few workshops with some of you here, I see you in the room, but it's great because when we do these workshops and we bring the customers and we tell them, these are the people who are writing the solution for you. Like, it really opens up some eyes. They're like, yeah. So they actually talk to the people building the solutions for them. And it makes it that much more compelling in the sales cycle. That's why we try to do these workshops at least a little further in the life cycle if we can in Vedbæk, and it's a great experience. I mean, some of our R&D teams folks are just great with customers. One of the things that we get good feedback from these workshops is the customers tell us the best thing about Microsoft is accessibility. And this is true. Even when Steve Ballmer talks in the session, at the end of the session is steveb@microsoft.com. Send me an email. And you will get a response, no matter who you are. And that's the beauty of Microsoft. That's the thing that customers appreciate the most. We are accessible. Because at the end of the day, they drum it into us every day. CPE, customer partner experience, is the most important thing, right? And so we are out there, and the customers do appreciate that. And so taking them there for these pursuits really helps. Let's talk a little bit about solution positioning. I think both Melissa and Gil talked about this a little bit. We can and we do full integrated suites. Our solutions are no longer mid-market solutions. We are truly enterprise solutions. Companies like Dell, like Revlon, like Carrefour. I mean, you got like huge companies that are using our solution. AB Agri is a multinational company. These are companies which have businesses in hundreds of countries, and we're running our solutions in these companies. So we do sell our solutions. We do deploy our solutions as an integrated full suite. But especially in manufacturing, and more so in Europe, maybe it's a little bit different in other parts, more so in Europe, SAP has a pretty strong foothold there. And the last thing we want to go do is go say, hey, let me go rip out your SAP and put in AX, because there will be a quick exit to the door. Because, I mean, when you think about it, when we talk to these companies, these are CIOs that have, I don't know, bankroll 100 million to maybe $1 billion on their solution there. They've put in a lot of investment. They go to the board and they say, hey, you know what? Guess what? After all this investment, not working for us. Need another solution. Like, let me find you a new CIO to start with, and then we'll talk about the new solution. Right? So it doesn't work. That approach does not work. So what we do is we talk about a workload at a time. So it's essentially two different selling approaches, depending on the needs of the customer. If the customer is looking for a full suite adoption, the pitch that we have is it builds, you get your standard processes, you go all the way from an optimized to a synergistic process, you reduce your ERP costs, your IT costs. And we can do that, we're doing that, we've got multiple case studies to back it up. But more and more with manufacturing, it's all about what are the workloads that we can resolve for the customer. This is a powerful message, one, because a lot of manufacturing companies are manufacturing, but they also do distribution. And then maybe some of them, depending on the business, may even start a retail store at some point. They have some professional services business. Microsoft is unique in that sense. They don't have to go buy another solution. They just have to instantiate that set of functionality. And that's a really compelling message. So one of the first things we tell them is that our solution has a set of core and horizontal workloads, but also has the industry pivots. So we can put in multiple solutions, we can enable it, and as the organization grows, or as they choose different divisions of the organization, we can instantiate AX for them. What this is pivoting into is, you'll see, so what you saw before was the Dynamics 2.0 vision. And what you're going to see, what it's pivoting into is this whole discussion around operational efficiency, operational optimization, and customer interactions. This lines up perfectly to the Gartner Pace Layer model, if any of you are familiar with the Gartner Pace Layer model. So at the base, Gartner talks about the systems of record. And this is a very good message because it really does resonate with the customers. The systems of record are ones that you put in your organization and you reconfigure from time to time, but you don't replace these systems. These systems are there for maybe 10 years, more. You don't need to necessarily replace these systems. These are your finance, your HR, budgeting systems. Those don't need to change on a daily basis. Where your bang for the buck comes from is from your systems of differentiation and your systems of innovation. And that's where we talk about operational optimization, and we talk about, we can help with manufacturing, we can help with distribution, supplier relationship management, or we can talk about the customer interactions directly, the Salesforce automation. The other aspect that we talk about here is that whole solution approach. Because I love all of our Microsoft solutions. So I'm not necessarily taking sides on AX or CRM, though I'd love to. But it depends, it really depends on the customer need. So if the customer need dictates that they've got right now a Salesforce automation or a care and service need, we will lead with CRM. If the customer's needs are more on other workloads like advanced planning and scheduling, mixed mode manufacturing, we'll lead with AX. We'll lead with both, but the idea is it really depends on the customer needs. We don't lead with product. We lead with solution. That's the key. So what we're doing with that is going about building these industry solution maps with your help. So we work with partners. Partners are helping us build it out. But what we try to do is go build clearly what is the solution strengths of AX. Which workloads can we do out of the box with AX or CRM? And then where do we need an ISV, and which are those ISV that we partner with? Again, as I talked about before, we have a pretty broad partner segment. What we're trying to get is very specific and say, these geographies, these workloads, these industries, these are our go-to partners. And we'll work with everybody, but we've got to go, as we go up market, get more specific. So that's essentially our go-to-market strategy. Just as Gil mentioned earlier, I'll raise my hand too and say we're always looking for more partners, especially those that can sell into these specific industry. So if you're out there, you've got pre-sales capabilities to go sell to these specific industries, let us know. We'd love to get you into our system. Finally, I'm just going to talk about one more. So our counterpart from APAC, his name is Jasbir Singh. He wasn't able to make the trip. But in APAC also, we have a very similar kind of a structure, as you saw. Adrian Johnston runs our APAC region, and their key industries, also manufacturing with Jasbir. Financial services is they're working on a lead for that as they are with public sector. But right now they already have manufacturing and retail. So retail is Raj Raghunathan, manufacturing is Jasbir, and their key verticals or industries are automotive, IEM, and high tech. And they've got some great names already out there. I think we've got the Nissan name out there. That's a huge win. And so that's it. So look forward to talking to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Actually, if you join me up on the stage, we have maybe a few minutes for questions. Plus, we'll stay afterwards, by the way. So just wrap by saying, in general, that you will continue to see Microsoft make huge investments in R&D, of course, all up for all of our business groups. But you'll also see us bringing to bear the full suite of Microsoft products through the fabric of Dynamics. So just continue to look forward to great, exciting announcements in the future. And I'd just like to wrap by saying that we're actually in the manufacturing segment. If you're in the manufacturing segment, you should be able to understand our partner strategy. Because our partner strategy is a proven manufacturing strategy. Manufacturers, in order to be more flexible, build modular platforms, and they slowly but surely delay the actual customization to be closer to the consumer. That, in fact, is Microsoft's partner strategy and why you're so critical to our success. So I just want to say again, if you're in the manufacturing industry, you should have a very clear understanding of what our approach is with partners. So with that, we're just left a few minutes for questions. We can take a few, and then we'll shut down and stick around for just questions offline. So are there any questions? There's a microphone here if you want to step up. Doesn't look like it. All right, so we'll stick around, guys, and we're more than happy to answer questions. And thank you so much for joining us.